Hello, I'm Bruce Zimmerman. This is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week. Now, at this time of year, we're starting to be inundated with tomatoes. But we've been inundated with tomatoes, I would say, for well over a month now. And the reason is that we planted grafted tomatoes. Now, with grafted tomatoes, you'll find that they're a little tougher. They're a little more aggressive. In fact, in some cases, very much more aggressive. So, a couple of things you have to plan for. One, you can plant them a little earlier. This in itself will make it a little earlier to ripen. One. Two, they are earlier ripening because they are a little bit more aggressive. So they don't rely quite as much on warm soil. Now remember, tomatoes do like to have warm soil. They really hate cold feet. As a result, when you plant them, make sure that the soil is warm. Whether you're using a mulch or a plastic mulch or a mulch, but you want to get that warmth going. Okay? You want to do lots of organic matter to retain the moisture so it's consistent. And also, you want to use a tomato food with calcium in it. The calcium will help to prevent a lot of diseases, particularly blossom end rot. As a result, you'll find that the tomatoes you get are consistently large, full, not soft, ready to pick, and earlier. Why? Because you planted them earlier, they're more aggressive because you planted grafted ones. Now, grafted ones are, of course, more expensive, but they're worth it. Trust me when I say that. If you're going to have a bad year, this is like buying insurance. If you have a good year, then you'll just have everything more of and earlier, okay? And they last longer going into fall. You give them a little bit of frost protection, and you could be picking tomatoes in this area into early October and ripening on the vine. So you want to plant grafted tomatoes. Okay, so you've done your soil prep. You know that you're going to have to space these out further than you're used to. They are going to be wider. They are going to be taller. They are going to have more fruit. In some cases, I do take out some of the suckers. Others I leave in. It's a question call on the season and also on how aggressively the particular tomato variety is growing for that year. So it is up to you whether you leave them in, take them out, or do both, right? And I would strongly recommend extra large tomato cages. Now, the ones I use, I make out of concrete reinforcing wire. Make them bigger, taller, stronger, etc. You can still reach in with your full hand and pick your tomatoes, but you can keep forcing the growth inside. You may want to, on some cases, allow some of it to grow towards the outside, but what I find is they just keep going, getting more and more aggressive, and the result is under the weight of the tomatoes as they ripen, they can actually bend over and break off. So I try and keep them inside the cages. So if you think your standard tomato cage will work for you, even if it's one of those big ones that you normally see in the garden centers, you could be finding yourself in trouble within about 4 weeks after you plant if you use those. So bigger tomato cages or make your own, okay? And I know PC does make the tomato cages for grafted ones. Now, grafted tomatoes have an understock that's understock is different than the top. That means in order to maintain this strength, this vigor, etc., the bottom and the top have to be planted to the correct depth. If you plant them too deep, they revert to the top and you don't get the aggressiveness or the amount of fruit. So Where the graft is must always stay above the ground. Got it? So incredibly important that people got to know, we've got to tell them, and you got to remind them because they're not used to this. Remember in the old days when you used to be able to take your leggy tomatoes, pull the bottom leaves off, lay it sideways, plant it, and have it tipped up and grow like a weed, right? Nah, not going to happen with these, okay? That's the other reason why you are going to make sure that the soil is warm, because you are going to be planting to a set depth. They always come in bigger pots, they're bigger rooted, they're better to starts, and they're well worth the money. Result is that you're going to be eating tomatoes before your neighbors are, okay? Doesn't matter how early, you're going to. So grafted tomatoes, excellent. Now they graft different varieties on the understock, so you can actually grow many of the varieties out there that you're used to in your area and get these results. In this area, this year we grew Tiger Blush. Now this is a grafted, and it's elongated, it's yellow, it's sweet, it's delicious. And it is one of the to be always planted in my garden. Now, there is Big Beef, which, let's be honest, it's a good variety to begin with. And so, with a bigger, firmer red tomato, you can't go wrong. Go for it, particularly if you get a grafted one. Ultra sweet. Now, the tomatoes are a little smaller, a little earlier, but they have that good taste and tomato taste without being really sweet. So, good tomato. Fireworks is an excellent one. Now, this one we did grafted, and it's about a 2.5-inch round tomato. Great for slicing, great for salads. They don't take up a huge amount of room on the plate when you're trying to put lots of other good food on the plate at the same time, but still gives you that great flavor. And it, again, has been another one we will be adding to the regular list. The Indigo Rose. Now, this is a grafted one. It starts out a purple-black, and you don't pick it until it is mostly red. And the reason for that is that's when it's ripe on the inside. You pick it when it's black, it's going to be green on the inside. So, black first. The black-purple, shiny, pretty, but not ripe. Okay? And don't mistake this for blossom end rot on the bottom. Well, this is the whole tomato. Now, normally we have always found that red candy is terrible in our garden. We do not know why. We don't get the size, we don't get the sweetness, and we don't get the crop off of this one. We have grown it in containers. We've grown it in the ground. Okay? And we don't want to grow it anymore. But every time we get red candy and we do the tasting at the Stokes trials for PC, we keep coming across this really good red, sort of grape-style tomato, and it's red candy. It's got us in an absolute quandary. So, recommendation, try red candy in your garden. Maybe it works for you. Now, this year we tried 2 tomato plants, cherry tomatoes, red, in the containers up on the pool deck. Now, these are 45 and 48-day tomatoes. That means real early. They are wider than most, shorter than most. Think of an indeterminate tomato that's 9 inches tall. I said 9 inches tall, but 3-4 feet across. Okay, and loaded with delicious fruit. You want that one. Or the other one, where it's 18 to 24 inches high and about 3 feet across. Power Pops and Cherry Punch for containers. These are not available at PC. You will have to go looking for these. They are very early, and trust me, fabulous in a container. So if you've got a patio or a deck or a balcony, try these and just pop them in your mouth or pop them into a salad as you go, because you're going to have a lot of them. Now, at the trials where we tried many different tomatoes, but to be honest with you, of all the tomatoes we tried, there was a couple that stood out, okay? And the first one is Orange Zinger. Orange Zinger. It's sort of an orangey color. It's a cocktail size. That means it's bigger than your little cherries, and it's not as big as your smaller tomatoes. What do you got? You got a great, sweet, lovely tomato. Great for salads, great for a plate, great to pop in your mouth. Take one bite. I'll call this one a polite 2-bite tomato. How's that? The other one that we really liked was Pink Cupcake. Now, understand this. Most people are not used to a pink tomato. Think of this one as a large tomato, like a beefsteak, a little later in the season, but pink. The skin is pink. The flesh is more towards red, but it is more pink, okay? Great flavor, large. It will be a little later. It's a 72-day tomato, and it has been added to the list just on its taste, okay? There will be another one that I'd like to try, and this one is under a really strange category. It's called a hybrid heirloom. That means it's an heirloom that's been crossed in order to give it more resistance to diseases, etc. And that's a good thing. And it's called Perfect Flame. It's good flavor. It is from Pan American Seed, so if you want to go talk to them about that, please do. Okay, and there is another one, beefsteak. It's called PLR beefsteak. It is a hybrid heirloom as well. It's okay. Okay? But I still find that one may be a little more towards that cat face that the hybrid, the old heritage has a tendency to do. But Orange Zinger definitely is an add to the list for you. 1 to 1.5 inches in diameter. Very sweet. And from Pan American Seed or Ball. Okay, which is the same thing. Okay, so there you go. Some tomatoes and what you should be doing. And if you didn't have a great season with this cool, wet gardening year, at least in this area, then this would have saved you. Okay, by simply planting and spending the money and stop being so cheap. Yes, you're cheap if you didn't plant them, and you would have been tomatoed out by now, okay? And I mean tomatoed out just like my family. We've been giving away tomatoes for 3 weeks or more. That's how many tomatoes we have, and we don't plant a large amount of tomatoes, plants, okay? But we certainly do get lots of tomatoes just following the rules. I'm Bruce Zimmerman. This is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week.